Risqué was finally back to being a boat I could sail across the waters of Millerton Lake again. I was looking forward to her being back to my happy place and not a project sitting on the trailer on the hard that needed time and money dumped into her every day. I had been antsy and impatient as I got closer and closer to the sailing season here on the lake. You see, Millerton Lake gets good wind in the summer. In the winter time, there are times the wind is blowing so hard that the water is white-capping and the getting's good, but it's sporadic and random. In the winter, you never know if you're going to come out and sit still in the middle of the lake that's so still and becalmed it can now be referred to as Lake Placid, or if you're going to get that 25-knot steady wind from the east heading west. If there are heavy winds in the winter, and they are westerly, it's because it's either right before a storm or right after one. And I've seen some bad storms out here. I've even spoken this before on the channel, so most people take the winter to do boat maintenance, and I was no different. I had spent the entire winter, for the most part, keeping busy by dumping my time, money, and affection into my happy place, Risqué. All of this was so that my summer could be spent on the water and under sail. Summertime on Millerton is the opposite of the winter experience. You can almost set your watch to a steady and consistent wind that is at least 6 to 10 knots swooping over the dam blowing easternly. If you're a sailor on Millerton Lake, then your day starts in the early afternoon because that's when the wind begins to call every sailor out of the slip. Every day, no matter what. It's that consistent. And after a long winter refit, I couldn't wait to raise her sails and heel her over till things started sliding off the shelves below deck like I do every time I sail. I was at my boat by noon, and I was pulling her out of the slip just minutes later. I brought my son Logan with me to spend some one-on-one time with him. I was going to get that mainsail up, and the two of us were going to spend the day manipulating the sails to catch the wind just right. I had coated the mast track with marine lubricant and had installed lazy jacks and ran new electrical and was excited to see how much easier she was to sail. The goal here was twofold. 1. Watch my son fall in love with sailing the way I had. And now that she was easier to sail with just one person, I thought the boat was going to be the key to keep my soon-to-be 16-year-old son from becoming way too cool to hang out with his own father. With Risqué, I could trick him into hanging out with me without him knowing it was all about the bonding and having our own happy place, a bit more than it was about the sailing. And 2, test sailor after the refit and bathe in the success of a job well done on a boat that deserved to be taken good care of by me since its last owner, Mr. Wagoner, had taken such pride in her since before I was even born. As I got out of the marina in Winchell Cove, I felt the wind hit my hair and it swooped over the bow of my boat, and I decided now was the time to finally raise my main and get back to the simple joys of harnessing the wind and making her my bitch and gliding across the water. Oh shit, the wind in here, sideways. Put us into the wind. That way. Right there, okay. It was finally time to raise the mainsail and get her underway. Finally. After a long winter and very little patience left, I was going to finally sail her. I had the drone in position for a great shot of a sail going up for the first time. Another camera on a gimbal with a good angle of us in the cockpit, and I was ready to finally capture the moment Risqué spread her wings. Logan was at the helm keeping her in the wind, me on the main halyard, cameras rolling, and a winter's worth of work about to come to fruition. And it was right about here I began to realize I may have been too impatient and definitely a bit too optimistic. I had forgotten Murphy's Law. For those of you who don't know who Murphy is, let me just say he's a dick. And if you're in the military, you definitely know who he is. And if you're in the military, I don't mean like he's not like a dick in the way that Jody is, but Murphy can still ruin your life or your day pretty good. Every veteran I know knows Murphy, and everyone, in or out of the military, will come across his law eventually. He applies to all walks of life, actually. In the infantry, which is what I was in, he actually has a specific set of laws that apply to combat, and these are Murphy's laws of combat. But his principles apply quite well to lifestyles far outside the military, and now that I think of it, he's probably half the reason veterans use the F word as much as we do. The other half, for those that deployed, was usually Jody, but for now I'm going to stick with Murphy. Murphy's Law is quite simply, if it can go wrong, it will. And as a Marine, it was something I always anticipated for and expected. It's actually made me quite the pessimist, to be honest, but even me, a Marine and combat veteran, I had grown complacent over the years. I had smelled the barn all winter and I couldn't wait to sail her again, and in doing such I had envisioned in my head far too many times what I thought it would look like to be back on the water sailing. And I didn't think about what Murphy might have to say about it. And as usual, as soon as you have forgotten that the day going as planned isn't owed to you, it's usually when he rears his ugly head. And right about here is when everything started to go south real fast. You see, right about here is when I realized that this halyard is now harder to use than it's ever been before. I should be able to just pull this with my hands for almost the entire process and then finish it off with the winch. But I couldn't get that sail up more than a few feet before I had to break out the winch and put the elbow grease into it. Why? Why it should be easier now than ever. I even finally cleaned out the mast tracks and coated it with lubricant so it would slide up the damn thing like nothing. Now I can barely get the sail to move. I try not to get mad, but it was starting to show on my face, and how can I be this close to finally being back in the water under sail and still get denied? It's been 190 days. How is this harder now than ever before? And before I could stop and think about what was going on, Murphy chin checked me again, and this time it hit me right in the wallet pretty hard. He had given me the old 1-2 combo, and because I hadn't been expecting him like usual, he had me on the ropes after just a few hits. The first punch landed was my mainsail and halyard being basically useless, and therefore my boat was basically unsailable, as it was harder to sail now than ever before, and not easier to sail now than before, which was, by the way, the whole point of the refit. But that second hit came in when my $1,800 drone decided to kill itself. It had disconnected from its controller for no reason. And because it had lost the ability for me to be able to control it, it did what it was supposed to do actually. Stop, go to a safe altitude that I determined before I turned it on and flew it, and fly directly back to where it took off from, and then land straight down and shut itself off. The problem was the drone does about 32 miles an hour at max speed, and my boat, under full power, does maybe 6 knots. That same boat, that's stuck with the sail up now because the sail doesn't want to come down any easier than it wants to go up. Still don't know why. And there's no way I'm beating this drone back to the dock before it sets itself down on the water and sinks to the bottom of the lake. Instead of sailing around the lake with my son on a boat that I had worked hard to make it more enjoyable and easier to sail, Murphy had made sure it was now harder. Instead of having lots of great footage of Risqué finally back on the water under sail, Murphy had also made sure that my drone was now going to kamikaze itself into the water next to my slip at great cost to myself and this channel. Worst of all, I think that refit made sailing even harder, not easier. And then I think that mast is going to have to come down, which means I'm still not summer ready. The icing on the cake was the fact that I now don't have any money to replace the drone because I just spent it all on the boat to make it easier to sail, which, again, seemed to have the opposite effect. I was about to lose my shit, to be honest. A slew of obscenities began building up my mind, none of which are going to be YouTube friendly. I could feel the heat growing in my face, and my hands felt like little balls of fire. And usually, when I'm this mad, it's more or less like being in a car that's losing control and you're just along for the ride at this point. It's going to destroy something and you can't stop it. It's already started. I had never, ever won a fight with my temper since I've been back home from Iraq, to be honest. It's been 15 years of therapy at the VA hospital, and it's been a pretty big issue in my life. My son had this look on his face like he knew his day was about to be ruined already, and now he's stuck on the boat with a crazy person. And then I had this moment of clarity. His day wasn't ruined because of a halyard, or a sail, or a drone. It was going to be ruined because his father still doesn't have his PTSD under check. Still. After more than a decade. And it's pathetic. And it's not happening anymore. And this was the moment I decided I'm still sitting on the boat with my son. It's just me and him. How big of a deal is this? These problems? My sail doesn't want to go up. Yeah, it sucks. It's super disappointing. My drone is on its way back to the slip, where the chances of it landing exactly where it took off from are slim to none, since it's always about a dozen feet off when it lands, so it's very likely in the water and not on that dock. So I probably lost my drone too. Yeah, that also sucks. But I realize that if I blow my lid and lose my temper, this is what my son will remember. This is what he will associate with boats. This is what he will remember when he thinks of spending time with his father. More than anything, I was tired of losing the fight and my struggle with PTSD and my temper. I wasn't going to turn this boat into an emotionally toxic environment, because in the end, it's not the boat that makes him fall in love with sailing or that keeps him close to me as a teenager. It's going to be how I handle this right now, in this moment. I just kind of stopped. I decided that Murphy got the first 2 punches in, and they were good ones, but he wasn't about to knock me out of a relationship with my son. And he wasn't about to ruin the relationship that he has with boats or sailing. And to be honest, this moment right here that I have on camera, it doesn't look like much, but it was the first time since I had been home from Iraq, which is over a decade, that I decided I maintained control and did not lose my cool completely. I simply decided not to be that guy with a temper. I decided that my son and I being on this boat and having a good day was going to happen whether it went as planned or not. And since my first plan was out the window, I decided that on the way back to the dock, I was going to make a new plan. So I went back to the marina, where by some miracle the drone had landed on the dock and not the water. And I mean that it's a miracle. So I was trying to put the sail up, test these lazy jacks out. None of it was working out right. Everything's all twisted up. It's all dicked up still. I'm not happy with it. But right when I was about to get mad at the sails, my drone disconnected and decided to fly back to the marina. Now I took it off by hand before I launched the boat. And I was like, there's just no way this thing is going to go back to the dock and land on the dock. It's going to just land itself in the water somewhere. And we came back. There it is. Now, that infuriates me, but it also, that's a streak of luck right there. And let me tell you why that's luck. Because it thought that this is its home slip. This is where it took off from. It was literally, that's my slip. Right there. That's where I parked to get the drone. That's where it landed. Which means this thing was literally like 35 feet off and it still managed to somehow accidentally land on the slip. So I'm not pushing my luck anymore with the drone today. By the time we picked up the drone and pulled back out of the slip for the second time, I had devised a new plan. Skip the sailing part and take him to a quiet part of the lake. Drop the anchor and feed him lunch and talk to him like the young man he was becoming. We could swim and eat and hang out as long as he wanted, and I decided I would measure how good of a time he had with whether he waited until almost sundown to go back. Sails be damned, refit be damned, DJI drone technical problems be damned. My son would come first, and my temper and my boat issues would come last. I put a smile on my face, gave him the tiller, and guided him to a great spot called Sky Harbor. Lots of people come here in the summer and swim and picnic. It's a pretty good ride on a motorcycle, curvy roads overlooking the lake, and every guy that's ever been on 2 wheels has taken a girl out here to this spot and put a blanket down. I took Britt out here a lot in my other life when I was back in that motorcycle club. But today, it's going to be where me and my son are going to drop the anchor and just relax. Finally in the water, and now that I know that the halyard is catching on something inside the mast, I knew that it was going to have to come back down and the damn boat refit was still not done then. But today, for the time being, in Sky Harbor, with my son and some steaks, I decided that there was nothing else going on. I would tell him stories, and I would feed him, and we would swim, and we wouldn't care about all that stuff that had prevented me from finally sailing. And so I did. We're anchored in about 30 feet of water, right outside of Sky Harbor.
Dr. Pepper? I hate backwasher. Nothing pisses me off more than backwashers. Make sure. Yeah, I used to, when I was in the Corps, people would be like, hey man, I'm gonna get a sip of your soda. Give me a sip. It was always Rippets. These little energy drinks called Rippets. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any refrigerators, so we would have boxes of Rippets, and they were these little cans. They were like this tall, but they were, you know, like the same width as a normal can, but they were real short. Mm-hmm. We had like crates and crates of them, and they're energy drinks, and man, they were like potent. Okay. And anyway, we didn't have fridges, so I like in my entire life, I've still to this day, I've probably drank 1,000 Rippets. The ones with the red on the cans. I don't know what flavor it was. It tasted like piss. But we all got addicted to them. But I'm telling you, I've never had one to this day. I'm 35 now. One, I've never seen a Rip It in the States. I know they're there, but I've never seen one. But I've never had one cold. I've always had one at like 80 or 90 degrees. I've had 80 or 90 degree Rip Its every time. Because when I was in Iraq, man, it was so hot. Everything we drank was just steaming hot. It was terrible. We used to put water bottles in our socks, and then soak the socks in water, and then put them in the shade. And that was the only way you can get stuff to like cool down a little bit. So I don't know. It was a Rip Its all the time. I always drank hot Rip Its.
Back to backwash.
Yeah. So it was already bad enough. So backwashing. People are like, hey, let me get some of your Rip It. And I hand it to them. They got like this big dip in their mouth, like this fat. It's called a horseshoe. It was like from here all the way around the front of their lip, all the way to the other side of their jaw, just full of chewing tobacco or dip or chaw. Called it chaw. Let's have some of your chaw. Anyway, full of dip, and they would like take a swig, and they'd like, and I could just see the dip spit going back into my Rip It, and then hand it back to me like, this is fucking yours now, man. Like, I'm not interested. You know, one time, I was chain smoking at the time. I also had like 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And I would wake up in the morning, man, and or whenever I woke up, I never really had I never had a day or night cycle. It was just, you sleep when you can, you wake up when you can, or whatever. But like sometimes you'd be up for days, and other times I literally would nap all day and just in between watches. I'd have fire watch and I'd just sleep. Or I'd be on QRF on standby and just sleep. You know, and it was weird, but like when I was awake, the first thing I would do is I'd light up a cigarette, and I would never use my lighter again. I would just light the next one off at the end of the first one and just keep going until I went back to sleep. I smoked like that all the time because I figured I'm going to die soon. You know, like cigarettes ain't going to kill me. And that's not true. Yeah, but like I couldn't stand the people that dipped. Like dipping was disgusting to me. One day I was on fire watch. It was like in the middle of the night, and I was on the LAB 25, so I was in the gunner seat on top of the turret, and there's a little box on the left side of the turret, and in the book it's called the externally mounted binocular receptacle. But that's where we put our Gatorade bottles. Okay, that's just everyone put their Gatorade bottles there. And why would I use binoculars if I have gun sights? You know. So anyway, so I was standing up there one night. I had my night vision goggles on. Everything is green. And when you wear night vision, people don't realize, like when you look down, it's like this close to you, or it's this far away. Like your depth perception is a little bit off. When it gets close, like out further away, it's not so bad. I don't know if they got better. They probably got better equipment now, but in 2006, that's the way it was. And I'm just trying to stay awake. So there's tricks to stay awake. You know, in the Marine Corps, you do not fall asleep on watch and fuck over your Marines. You don't ever do that. Okay? They are literally, the only reason they can sleep is because they know you got them. They know that you got them. So like, you don't fall asleep on watch. Like, you're just the biggest piece of shit if you do that. And anyway, so I'm trying not to fall asleep. I'm trying not to be a turd. And there's tricks. You can rub Tabasco sauce from MREs, like under your eyes, right here. Not in your eyes, that's fucking stupid, but like under your eyes.
Keep you awake.
And it'll keep you awake, but it makes your eyes burn, so it's counterproductive. So I don't know why people think that that's a good idea. There was a couple scout snipers that told me that, because they lay down all the time. And they lay down for days without moving. And I'm like, how the fuck do you stay awake? And like, you tickle the roof of your mouth with your tongue. And then like, it kind of helps you stay awake. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like trying everything. And like, ultimately, if you want to stay awake, man, eat a couple bananas. The carbs will help you get energy and keep you awake. And then the other thing is to, you know, drink. Or hum or do something, you know, but try not to. But I'm on watch, so it's like, now I'm in a big armored vehicle in the middle of the open. We want them to see us, you know. We want them to know that we're there, and we want them to know, like, if you do anything in front of us, you know, don't fucking bother. We were just making sure that no one's planting bombs on the road, so we wanted them to see us. We weren't hiding. Anyway, I'm trying to stay awake. Here's the part with the Gatorade. I reached down for the Gatorade.
The spit bottle.
Took a sip, and it was a big old. It was just a big. The whole bottle was full of people spitting their chaw. Dude, I projectile vomited all over. I mean, I was like, blah, off the side of the vehicle, just blah, just dry heave for like the rest of my shift. People were so mad because you always sleep next to the vehicles, and when you sleep next to the vehicles, you're supposed to sleep on a certain side, and you're supposed to put down infrared chem lights around where you're sleeping. That way, if another vehicle goes by you,
they won't run you over.
They won't run over the sleeping Marines in their sleeping bag, which is a joke because that's why we call infantry crunchies. We call the straight leg. We call the straight leg infantry guy the crunchies.
I saw a movie. Open them up for me too, please. I think they're in the sink. Use that knife and cut them open. Probably wrong. My son called me out on the steak thing. In my defense, if I burn these, I probably will. It's not because I suck at barbecuing. It's because I've never used this grill before. What? I just cut it open. How do you think I did?
I don't know.
Medium rare. Nailed it.
Yeah, see, I don't believe you. I don't know. Oh, yeah, I should have.
Nailed it.